If you want to make sure you stay in good conversation, you gotta tune in to Coffee and Conversation with Collette. That's me, Thursday mornings from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. on the only station, WHPR TV 33. See you soon. Great, amazing Friday to you. Rise and shine, up and at 'em. It's an awesome new day. You're officially tuned into Coffee and Conversation with Collette, and I'm Collette. You all know I do my curtsy because that's what I do, and I got these curls. My curls popping, so I gotta just, I gotta just get them out the way because, then you all talk about you can't see my face and all of that. Such a great day, such a great time to be with you. And I just want to thank you all. Things happen. We were having some technical difficulties, and I got all the outpours of love and support because for those of you who were able to see the show yesterday, thank you so much for seeing it and being so excited about wanting to call in and couldn't call in. So thank you for that. And for those of you who didn't see the show, we hope that you're able to see it on today, and we thank you for your patience in that. And you know that things happen, but you always know it doesn't change the fact that we're going to have an amazing conversation. So no matter when you and how you tune in, you're going to have a great conversation. That's just what it is on WHPR TV 33 or Comcast 91 if you're watching us on Roku or streaming live or however you're getting to us. It's going to be an amazing conversation. And so let me give you the call-in number for this morning, okay? It's a call-in number. We're working on one, and I got us. So everybody that does a ring, I'm going to get you on today. It's 313-365-7379. Let me give it one more time. 313-365-7379. And I'll give it intermittently. There you go. You see it up on the screen. That's that's so great. Thank you so much for team because I'm like, okay, I'll go throughout the time and then I'll say it again so to make sure it's on the air, but there it is right there. And so you can call right on in, and of course, I will get us live and having the conversation. So let me just, first of all, I'm going to be on a rant today. I'm ranting. Today I'm ranting, right? I just want to let you all know that no matter who it is that you are speaking to, no matter who you believe them to be and what their title is, always know that if you are in the right, you are in the right. Let me say that to you. And if indeed you have paid these individuals to provide a service for you, you can question if what they have done is correct. You can question the process by which they have completed your paperwork and the like. And let me just give it to you specifically. So, you all know I'm very hands-on, and you know that that's just who I am in my family and with my parents. And so, we were dealing with some tax issues with my mother. And so we had been going to a tax preparer for the last 4 years or so. And so she put some information on the forms. And of course, the IRS kicked back that we owed $3,000. And so you know me. I don't have a problem with if that is what the debt is. I just need to understand and see that it's justified. And so at the end of the day, I couldn't find out how it was justified. So because I don't have this expertise in accounting and all of that, I said, let me go back to the tax preparer because I wanted her to be able to explain. And so I'm presenting in front of her, and she wasn't able to explain to me why we got this debt and where the numbers came from that she put in the forms that we paid her to complete. So then she came to tell me that it was my fault, that it had to have been a number that I gave her. And I said, oh, no, contraire, mon frere. No, mon frere, that's not how this works. I give you the information, you fill in the blanks. That's how this works. And so if indeed you can't explain to me where this number is, then I'm not just going to eat the debt because we need to question it. We need to object to it and see what happens. So this was a 3 or 4 month process of me saying no, they saying yes. Oh, we don't understand. But oh, Collette, you just have to eat it. And I'm like, no, it just doesn't work. So let me just tell you, we tried it one more again a week or so ago. And we went. She put us in front of someone else in her office, and she said, "Okay." And the lady just said, "I'm sorry, I don't know anything about this, and I don't understand where the number came from, and I can't help." And I said, "Oh, okay. So let me just ask you. So you're just saying that there's nothing we can do about this?" And she said, "Yes." I said, "Let me just be clear. You're suggesting that there's nothing we can do about this." And she said, "Yes, all you can do is call in to make the payment or make payment arrangements." So I said, "Okay. Well, let's grab yourself, Mama. We're out of here." And you all know my mother. She's very calm. And she always tries to be accommodating. And I was smoking. Like, you could probably just see smoke coming out of my head. And so much so, and I think the look probably was just coming all across my face, because the lady that I was in front of said, "You just have this look." And I'm just looking at her like, "You must really think I was born yesterday? Maybe that's what you were thinking, because none of this makes sense to me." So we happen to be in another space, and I'm having a conversation, and this woman just pops up. And she starts talking, and she's like, "Well, no, that doesn't make sense, and I think I have someone that you can talk to." So we made a phone call. She made a phone call for us, and we went right to him. And he's actually going to be on the show from Accurate Accounting. I'm going to have him on this show because she made a phone call. We went right to him that day, explained the scenario. He said, "No, this doesn't make sense." He asked me for a couple of documents. I explained my position. He said he agreed. He looked at some things. Lo and behold, on yesterday, we went back. That $3,000 debt has been adjusted to $500. I want you all to let that sink in. So the $3,000 debt that someone tried to tell us that we owed and couldn't justify it, but because they're in a leadership position, they have a title, and we give all our power away to people that we believe have these titles and these positions. You all know I'm going somewhere with this morning, okay? And so we were to have hit a $3,000 debt if that in us said, "No, this doesn't make sense, and let me get something else. Let me find somebody else. Let me have a different conversation." And so I'm so thankful that Mr. Rod at Accurate, and thank you so much, and great morning, Miss Laverne, and Mr. Rod, finagled, changed, adjusted, said that there was an error in their calculations and the information that was presented, and so now the $3,000 is a $500. Much better. And so sometimes I have to give us examples that are exact. I want us to know exactly what it is, because if you can't relate to all the other things that we talk about from an international perspective or for a national perspective, you can relate to getting your numbers right at tax time, because we're all entering into tax time. And so you want someone who is going to be a true expert and an advocate as it pertains to understanding the importance of the accurate numbers, the process, completing the paperwork. That's just what you need. And that they're going to diligently work for you. So that's just what happened to us, and I was so appreciative. And so I wanted to share that with you because I needed that to be the onset of what we're going to continue to talk today about. Who is in control of America? Yesterday, we gave an overview about the State of the State address. We talked about the 6 points that Governor Snyder wanted to impress upon us that the state needed. We talked about the irony in the fact that now everyone is so focused on mobility and transportation and education coming off of the poo-poo by Amazon. So when Amazon, we put all these millions of dollars into wooing Amazon to consider Detroit as its latest, biggest hub, its headquarters. And in the midst of all that, Amazon said, "Well, no, because you really don't have a transportation infrastructure, and we don't believe that there's a talent pool to be able to support the type of workforce that we need at Amazon." And so now everybody wants to fix it. And so we talked yesterday about the simple fact that we have been talking about the inadequacies in education, and the truth is it wasn't made by the people. And so if we've had emergency manager upon emergency manager upon emergency manager that has been in the school system, in the district, whose fault is it if we are not having the curriculum and getting the information and the processes to make sure that our children are able to exceed outside of high school into higher academia? if that is indeed what their course is, or to go into the workforce, or whatever it looks like. But these formative years, the years in which we have not been in control of, but the governor has been in control of through an emergency management order, an act, that at the end of the day, whose fault is it? So it's not our fault if there isn't an adequate workforce, because we haven't been in control. So all the things that then people try to put on us, like my scenario this morning, they try to put on you and make you accept that as your narrative, that no, that's not my narrative. You created this. So in the words of that other group, you break, you buy. And so just like we talked about, the governor talked about Flint and that they're doing these water tests and that it's coming out equivalent to what all the other water systems are. Well, no, I don't believe that. I don't believe that that's accurate. I don't believe that Flint is made whole. And so we just kind of brush that to the wayside because that is, again, the narrative that they want you to believe. And so I believe that, let me just add one more if you missed it, that what is happening in our top tier of government, the President of the United States, and you all know that we just experienced this 3-day shutdown, even though the House and the Senate are all Republican majority, and of course the President is Republican, but yet we had a shutdown because they couldn't come up to an agreement. Let me just, that's something that makes you go, right? Because at the end of the day, you all should be pushing through legislation like this is an assembly line. You all supposed to be on all one accord, because before, when you listen to the rhetoric before, it was that President Obama didn't have it right, that his health plan wasn't right. All these things weren't right, but then you all can't fix them because then you can't agree. So then what's the narrative? Who's running the country? And I promise you, because we are committed to what? Being educated and enlightened and empowered, that because of that, if you don't know the truths, you can't begin to adequately create an action plan because you really don't know who it is that you are, quote unquote, fighting. So I'm going to share with us a clip, and it's a little lengthy. It might be about 10, 15 minutes, but I want you to bear with us because the clip gives a hands-on perspective about who runs the country, and it is a direct interview with Noam Chomsky. We've talked about him on this show. He is a prolific author, has tons of work. It's what they say. I can go on and on. But he's going to talk about who runs the country. And I want you to pay close attention because we're going to have some key points to discuss after the clip. So enjoy.
Constitute an axis of evil, arming to threaten the peace of the world.
Given the impotence of the media, it's the duty of intellectuals to speak out. And they don't come much more intellectual than Chomsky. He's credited with the central theory in the field of linguistics, that humans have an innate capacity for language that is hardwired into the brain. His very name has become a byword for the study of communication.
This is Nim Chimpsky. Nim, jokingly named after the great linguist Noam Chomsky, was the great hope of animal communication in the 1970s.
But his politics inspire rather less affection. His comments post 9/11, when he described the US as a leading terrorist state, drew hostile fire, even from allies on the left. But at 74, Chomsky shows no sign of relenting. In his speeches and writing, he has the gloves back on, denouncing Western greed and hypocrisy.
We need not rehearse the reasons why Britain and later the United States have been determined to control the Gulf region. It's enough to recall the observation of the State Department in 1945 that the resources of the region are a stupendous source of strategic power and one of the greatest material prizes in world history.
His most recent work is entitled Pirates and Emperors. I asked him first about the title.
That's plagiarized from St. Augustine, who in the City of God has a story about Alexander. His forces capture a pirate, and there's an audience between the pirate and the emperor, and he asks the pirate, "How dare you molest the seas?" And the pirate asks him, tells him, "I'm a small man with a tiny boat, so they call me a pirate. You're an emperor with a vast navy and you molest the world, but they call you an emperor. And that's a good allegory for the world, and in particular the contemporary world. The pirates are the ones who are condemned, not the emperors. Of course, the general population is attacked by both the emperors and the pirates. So it's not that the pirate, St. Augustine is not saying that the pirate is a nice fellow. He's just saying he's a small criminal as compared with a major criminal.
So who does control the world? Who are the emperors?
Overwhelmingly the United States since the Second World War, Britain before that, and concentrations of private power, which are enormous, and a tyrannical corporation is closely linked to the powerful states. It's a network of concentrated power with international institutions like the IMF and so on, which are called, they sometimes call themselves the masters of the world. That's a phrase that was in the Financial Times, a little ironically, but not wrong. Actually, they call themselves the masters of the universe. Adam Smith called themselves the masters of the world. Now they're called the masters of the universe.
We've gone a bit beyond it.
Yeah, didn't have space age in Smith's time.
But don't you sometimes need big government to deal with big business, that in a sense there is a kind of balance between these large forces?
It's like saying there's a balance between two members of the board of directors of General Motors. Yes, there's some kind of a balance, but they're so closely interlinked and connected that they're, to first approximation, they're the same thing.
Now, did September the 11th, do you think, mark a change in world politics?
It's a historic event. It was the first time in hundreds of years that the West, Europe, and its offshoots have suffered the kind of criminal atrocity that they constantly carry out against others, which is quite a change. That's why there's such shock in the West. This kind of thing we do to you, you don't do it to us. I mean, it's like the reaction in England when, at the time of the so-called Indian Mutiny rebellion in India, tremendous shock that they should do to us what we do to them all the time. And my genius would use it as an opportunity to intensify repressive and sometimes violent actions, and that's just what's happened. So the Russians took it as an opportunity to step up their atrocities in Chechnya, assuming correctly that they would be authorized by Washington, at least tacitly. China did the same in Western China, Indonesia and Aceh, Israel and the occupied territories. And you run through the list. I mean, countries ranging from the Central Asian dictatorships to democratic societies like the United States and others have used it as an opportunity to clamp down on their own citizens.
Now, looking at the current situation, when do you think is it right to intervene in the affairs of another nation?
I think there are conditions under which that would be possible. I mean, one basic condition is that nonviolent, you mean violent intervention, that nonviolent means have been exhausted. That's one condition. A second condition is that the people of the country in which you're intervening support the intervention. Under those conditions, and you can think of others, intervention would be justified. However, we don't ever apply those conditions. Take, say, South Africa under apartheid. There's no doubt that the overwhelming majority of the population would have favored intervention, probably military intervention. The other means had been tried for decades. Did anybody think of forceful intervention? Of course not, nor did I. Or take a recent case, East Timor. During the 1999, there were very large-scale atrocities going on. The population undoubtedly would have been delighted in military intervention. Well, Britain and the United States did intervene, namely by supporting Indonesia. Did anybody think of moving to do something else? Of course not. In fact, Britain was sending jets to Indonesia even after the Australian-led peacekeeping forces entered. That's the way the great powers intervene.
Now, you make quite a lot in the book of the fact that there is freedom of expression in America. But what you do point to is something more insidious, because you suggest that there is actually, though there may be freedom of expression, there's a control of freedom of thought. Now, how does that happen?
it was understood back time of the First World War that it's becoming much more difficult to control people by force. The popular struggles have led to the development of unions, parliamentary labor party, franchise extended, and so on. And coercion is just not going to work by force. So therefore you have to control thought. It's very striking that the contemporary systems of thought control, which are highly developed, very self-conscious, so leaders talk all about it, they come from England and the United States. So the British Ministry of Information, which any reader of Orwell knows what it was, that's from the First World War. It was aimed primarily to convert a pacifist population into raving anti-German fanatics. And it worked. And it impressed people. It impressed the business world. That's the origins of the modern public relations industry. It impressed American intellectuals who developed the conception of what they called manufacture of consent, control of thought. It impressed Hitler, who blamed the German defeat on superior Anglo-American propaganda and vowed that next time Germany would be prepared. And it has led in England and the United States primarily, England secondarily, to huge industries devoted to control of thought and attitudes, because you cannot control people by force.
But dissent has been growing since the 1960s in the Western world, and people are far more sophisticated now. I mean, even popular culture reflects the fact that anything from the X-Files to the film The Insider, that the idea of people discussing things, of trying to manipulate public opinion, I mean, that's highly developed now.
Sure, but when people were under the lash, they knew about it too. People are so aware of it that it has led to tremendous cynicism about almost anything. I mean, nobody believes what government officials say. Nobody believes what they read in the press. People don't believe professions. It's led to enormous cynicism and tremendous opposition. In fact, in my view, the more crucial things than the ones you mentioned are opposition to aggression. I mean, just take a look at the current war in Iraq and compare it with, say, the Vietnam War. It's a comparison which is often made, the protest. But the comparison is completely false. The opposition to the war in Iraq is far greater than it ever was to the war in Vietnam at any remotely comparable stage. I mean, this is the first war I think in European history, Europe and the United States, first one I can think of, where there was massive protest before the war. It's never happened. I mean, in the case of the Vietnam War, there was no protest until years after the war began. I mean, just in the last 30 or 40 years, say the United States, the level of civilization among the general public, not intellectuals, in a separate category, but among the general public, it's advanced enormously.
So do you think that intellectuals are not sufficiently engaged? Do you think they have become cynical?
Intellectuals are a separate category. Intellectuals are mostly servants of power. I'm talking about the general public, not the intellectual world. They remain pretty constant. I don't think they're subject to these changes, except marginally, of course, to some extent. But they're quite different. And quite generally, it goes right through history, intellectuals have been servants of power. Take, say, the First World War. On all sides, Germany, England, the United States, France, intellectuals were extremely enthusiastic about the war. There were a few dissenters, and the best known of them ended up in jail, like Bertrand Russell, for example, or Eugene Debs in the United States, or Rosa Luxemburg in Germany. Very small group of critics, some of them best known imprisoned, but most intellectuals were enthusiasts for their own country, and that's common, and it remains common. I mean, intellectuals write history, so you have to be a little cautious about what they say about themselves. And it looks prettier when it's written in books.
So do you then think it's a failure of the left, then, in the United States, that if there is this feeling that a war is not right, that there isn't more action, more political action about it?
Depends what you mean by the left. I mean, the left, what I mean by the left is out in the meeting with the public all the time. It's out in the streets. And so there are meetings of thousands of people. The biggest university in the country, the University of Texas, came out with a strong anti-war declaration. That's never happened in the past. You go to working-class towns and thousands of people show up for demonstrations and meetings. That's what I'd call the left. It's not the articulate left, but then the articulate left is never permitted expression. So during the Vietnam War, you didn't hear them either. I mean, the New York Times, for example, would never permit a comment by someone on the left committed to the involved in the peace movement, maybe a sentence here and there. But that's standard.
As far as your attitude to government is concerned, I mean, you have been known for many decades as being an agitator against what you see as bad government. I mean, some people have wondered sometimes whether perhaps you could have, alongside the criticism, offered a little more in the way of solutions as well.
There's plenty of solutions. In fact, that's all I and other people offer is solutions. Often the solutions are don't carry out crimes. That's the simplest solution. So if you want to reduce terrorism in the world, let's say, there's one very simple solution: stop participating in it. That doesn't end everything, but it cuts back the amount of terror by quite a notable amount. So that's a simple solution. If you want to look at other more complex cases, take, say, the Israel-Palestine problem. I think there's a solution, namely the one that the large majority of the American population support, which happens to be the international consensus on a two-state settlement that the U.S. government rejects. Okay, so there's a solution for you. Let's just follow the will of the American population and go through the list. For example, on say, environmental issues, there's plenty of solutions. It's claimed that what you say is correct. That's what's claimed by the intellectual world, that no solutions are offered by the critics. That's just nonsense. It's just they don't like the solutions.
Since you first started in political activism in the 60s, do you feel that you have made a great deal of headway?
I think the country has made a great deal of headway, and I'm happy to participate in it, but it's not traceable to individuals. I mean, these are mass popular movements, and big changes in culture. It's across the board. If you go back to the 60s, for example, there was no feminist movement, there was no environmental movement, there were no third world solidarity movements. There was no substantial anti-nuclear movement, no global justice movements. I mean, these are all developments of the last 20 or 30 years, and they come from all over the place. For example, the solidarity movements, which are quite unique. There's never been a time when people from the aggressor country went to the victims and lived with them to try to protect them. That happened in the 80s. Tens of thousands of Americans did it, and they came from conservative circles. A lot of it was church-based. And it came from Main Street in the United States. And now it's all over the world. So you have people, say, in the Israeli-occupied territories, in Colombia and all over, trying to help the victims.
And yet you say there's this groundswell of support on Main Street, and yet you have a right-wing government there in Washington at the moment, and you have a great discrepancy between the way that the rest of the world increasingly views the United States and the way that the people of the United States view themselves.
That's not true. Take, say, the international economic arrangements, what are called free trade agreements, so they don't have a lot to do with free trade. There's overwhelming public opposition to them. That's why these issues never arise in elections. If you take a look at the
It's still going, Sean. Yeah.
technique of marginalizing the public. And as you mentioned before, it's not that people are unaware of it. They know it. So before the year 2000 election, about 75% of the population regarded it as a complete farce.
But in which case, I mean, what happens to transfer that kind of feeling into any kind of action? Because at the moment you have people who actually, although they may be in favour of the idea of more self-government, having more control over their destinies, they're pushed to the limits just trying to, you know, keep their families together, keep their jobs down. I think there isn't going to be that kind of support.
That's part of the technique of control.
Well, isn't that going to be broken then, is it?
Well, why isn't it going to be broken? I mean, slavery was broken. broken. You look over history, one after another form of coercion and control has been broken. As the Soviet system was collapsed from inside, every system of tyranny we know about and oppression has been, people chip away at it and it ultimately collapses. There's nothing special about them. I mean, the systems of power that exist now are quite fragile, and they know it. So the World Economic Forum, for example, is well aware. That's what the Financial Times called the masters of the universe. They're well aware of how fragile their control is and concerned about it, and rightly.
What I wonder, though, is how you square your fundamental optimism about human nature with what seems to be a pretty pessimistic analysis of what's happening in the world.
It's a famous phrase that was borrowed by Gramsci, and that we should have pessimism of the intellect and optimism of the will. It's sensible.
Professor Chomsky, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for indulging me. I know that that was a little long for some of you, but I think that it gave a phenomenal overview and a perspective on the control, who actually controls. And so some of you might have some opinions about Noam Chomsky, and that's fine as well, because what do we know? We know that for most people who create an opinion and a position, it is based on what they're trying to accomplish. So everyone has a dog in the race, not a problem. You don't expect folks to not have a dog in the race, but you just need to understand that they have a dog in the race and then get the information, right? Don't shoot the messenger, get the information. And so I hope he gave you some things to think about. There's a technique of control. And let me just tell you, and as much as I can go back and forth with Brother Tyrone, he said it. He said it probably about a year or so ago when we were talking about the riots and what it looked like. And he talked about those who were in power, the intellectuals, the smart ones, were then elected to office. So look, we got a call. Let me get the line. Thanks so much for calling, and great morning to you.
How you doing today?
Great. How are you?
All right.
Nice.
You look scrumptious today.
Nice, scrumptious. Hey, Ma, you're a
I'd
mess.
like to give a shout out to TV 33,
Thank you.
Comcast 91,
Sure.
Detroit Housing Park, Mr. R.J. Watkins, Mr.
Yes.
Tyler,
Yes.
Hair Doctor,
Yes.
Mr. Jones, Miss Perryman, Miss Renee, Money Making Diva, Miss Collette Ramsey,
Thank
of
you.
course.
Yes.
Y'all love the TV show host.
Yes.
I'm sorry to hear about the TV show host that just recently passed away. I think her name is Miss Hervard. If I'm not pronouncing the name right, I apologize if I do.
Okay.
But I do want to acknowledge that TV 33 did acknowledge the death of one of their team members.
Yes.
Their memorial is going to be at Hartford Plaza. I really appreciate that, because that's what family is all about. And I've always seen TV 33 as a family. Same way I always shout out, rest in peace, J.D. Hill.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you for showing that clip that you showed today.
Sure.
That shows that public opinion is swayed by the people who run public opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. Say, you know what? I need you to say that again. I want people to really get. Did you get what he just said? He said public opinion is swayed by people who control public opinion. Did you get that? Did you get that? Okay, please continue.
You know, and I want to make a comment
Okay.
about, I've been calling your show for 2 years,
Thank you.
and I appreciate that you allow an open door for anybody and everybody to run their mouth on your show. Now, 2-3 years ago, I personally, DJ 8 Mile, was a part of Horace Sheffield campaign to become U.S. Congressman in this community.
Okay.
At the time when I was on his staff is when I found out that here in the city of Detroit, they did a redistricting. When they did the redistricting, somehow Grosse Pointe and Birmingham is in one district. Highland Park, Detroit, Romulus, Livonia is in another district.
Excuse me.
Okay. Nobody from the mayor, from senators, state senators, federal senators,
Okay.
no politician, no group, nobody said nothing.
Okay.
So, with that being said, 2 years later, we have a congressman that got accused of sexual harassment.
Yes.
As soon as he got accused, he walked away.
Yes.
Nobody said nothing. Okay?
Yes.
Now, our governor said it will cost $3 a person to run a special election. So since he feels that we don't have an extra $3 per person
Sure.
run an election, meaning we can pay for the election,
Yes.
but most people that rely on federal government, they always rely on federal government. They never feel that they have to pay for their own when you always rely on federal government.
Okay.
So we're going to wait 11 months for another election. Okay?
Yes.
Okay, the government said that. These people in this community trying to attack this person that holds the 13th District Democrat
Okay.
are just out their mind. They ain't said nothing about the redistricting. They ain't said nothing about the Democrats that's been in office. They ain't said nothing about the violence and the crime that's going on. They ain't said nothing about the drug epidemic in the city. But they want to attack somebody that does not even have no type of power
Okay.
and calling your show tripping. They need to back up off of you and back up off that nonsense, because these same people ain't do nothing these last 3 years about anything going on in our city. Nothing. But trying to set up some campaign to attack somebody who has no real power in our community.
Well, stay there for a minute.
want-
Stay there for a minute, because you bring a couple of things to mind. And let me just say this much to you and everyone. At the end of the day, the governor just touted in the State of the State address that we have millions upon dollars in the rainy day fund. So there's tons of money surplus that's sitting there. So that's an excuse. And at the end of the day, if the clip didn't show you anything, that they will create a narrative and create a conversation to have you looking at other people that don't have any power and influence. Now, I happen to have overheard some conversations, and that, isn't this funny? Allegedly, the mayor and some powers that be don't believe that the candidates that are out are worthy enough. And so that is why they opted to push the election back so that they could have an option to create the candidate that they wanted. Now, this is what I heard. This is just hearsay. And so, of course, if indeed that is what it is, to your point, then Kinlock is who you're referring to, that people are suggesting to remove. He didn't have any juice anyway. He was just the pawn that was put up there to create the narrative. Because if you actually believe that Kinlock has the juice that is going to influence the mayor and the governor, you are sadly mistaken. Seriously. Now, if he has that kind of juice, he needs to be the governor right now. Because you can't tell me that he can make a phone call. I don't care what kind of dirt you think he has or whatever the case may be. But he does not have the type of juice, and there's nothing against him, that's going to dissuade the governor from calling a special election. Sorry. It goes back to the point about who's running things. So if they already have a plan of who they want and what dogs they want to put in the race, and they know, to your point, that you haven't fought about anything else, and so you're not going to fight about this, then why not push it back 11 months? We can save that money and do something else with it. I'm just saying. So please continue.
Well, and thank you. But
Sure.
the point is that these people were calling your show.
Sure.
These people are calling TV 33 starting their nonsense.
Well, let me just say this. Hold on, and I appreciate that. And thank you. You're always just so very protective of me. But it's okay. You know, I'm a big girl. So that's why I give folks the license to call in, because I want us to have the conversation. Hear me. I don't have a problem with whatever position that you take. I just want us to be honest and truthful about why we're taking the position. That's all. I don't have a problem with it. I don't have a problem with it if you just don't like him and you want him to be removed and you want to put your own people in, so be it. Whatever it is, I don't have a problem with it, but you know me, we're going to pull back the layers. We're not just going to present it for how you're presenting it, because sometimes that just doesn't make sense. And so you can always call in. Come on, don't be like that, 8 Mile. Don't be like that. Let them call in and let us have the conversations.
Thank you, man. Because what it is you have to have an opportunity to find out where somebody coming from. The only opportunity you can find out where somebody coming from is you got to give them an opportunity to open their mouth.
Yes.
So that's what you're saying.
Yes.
And I totally understand that. The
Yes.
concept is you allow people to be themselves so you know what you're dealing with.
Yes.
That's the tool of success I see that you're practicing.
Yes, absolutely. Because what do we always say? There's more than one way to have a conversation. And my goal isn't to stop you from believing what you believe, but if that's what you believe, you should be able to defend it. And we should be able to have an intelligent conversation that yields us some type of solution. Not just a back and forth rhetoric where we're just heated and then everyone is upset. That doesn't make sense.
Okay, well, the other tool of success is only a fool argue with a fool, so I'll talk to you later.
Right.
And I kept saying it's called a circle conversation. Once I go in the circle conversation 3 times,
Yes.
it doesn't matter whether I'm right. It doesn't matter whether I'm wrong. It doesn't matter if I'm trying to prove a point.
Okay.
I'm going to stop because now I look like a dog chasing his own tail. That's
Great.
what I think of a circle conversation. Now, there's
Okay.
some people that think it's entertaining watching the dog chase his own tail.
Yes.
I see that as a waste of energy and a waste of time. That's why the concept is only a fool argue with a fool, so I'll talk to you later.
All right.
And I saw you do that. But it's just that whole mindset been carried over in other talk shows. And I'm like, that's not even the purpose of why they're there. Because at the end of the day, TV33 has given people in our community the opportunity to verbalize their feelings,
Sure.
their emotions, their spirituality, and make a profit. You can't make a profit when people are arguing about nonsense.
Well, you can. Oh, hey, stop. You can. It's always lucrative. You know, they always say drama brings about ratings. So you can. And let's be very conscious of our words. We're not dealing with fools and the like. It's just an opinion. And so we're mature enough to respect the opinion. And so just like I respect your opinion, and thank you. And everyone, and I saw we had another caller that beeped in. So I just want you all to know, the system that we have right now, I can only take one call at a time. So I want you all to be patient because I saw you beeping in. And so I'm going to hang up with 8 Mile and then you can call back. But it's one person at a time because we're making it work on today. All right. So 8 Mile, thank you so much. Did you want to wrap up? Do you have another wrap up statement or were you complete on today?
Well, first I want to also apologize to the city about the little event that didn't happen last night.
Okay.
I'm going to do a relocation of this event because at the end of the day, it needs to be a place in Detroit where people can play cards, play dominoes,
Okay.
and then listen to live talent.
Okay.
That's my mission to have a type place here in the city of Detroit.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Continue having an amazing day and living your dream. I appreciate it. So you all heard him. Now he just had an opinion, and 8 Mile's opinion was that, it's just a whole bunch of buffoonery, and you need to stop it, and that's what it is. And so my thing is, well, no, we just have to always understand what the motivation is. So let me go to the line. Thanks for your patience. Great morning to you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I hope I'm turning this down.
Yeah. No, you're good. You're good. We're great.
Okay, I wanted to mute the TV so that I make sure I did this right.
Sure.
It's been a while since I've called in, but you have not only, I shouldn't say opened my eyes, but connected a lot of dots with that conversation with the gentleman, I can't even his Russian name.
Sure, Noam Chomsky.
No, Chomsky.
Yes,
okay.
sir.
And I'm not criticizing, I'm trying to not be whatever, but the voice, see, what I look at, or what I remember, was there used to be 3 newspapers.
Okay.
So you had 3 different voices.
Yes.
Okay, which you had 3, they were different businesses.
Yes.
And that's gone. So even when you talked about the opposition to the governor, the people that were able to speak, what was their avenue to be able to speak?
Great point.
Even to voice an opinion. There is none now.
Nice.
Which means to where the president talks about fake news.
Yeah.
Cautious about who you're listening to and whatnot, and also look back at what it was so you can understand where it's going.
Yes.
It sounds cliche. It's like, when you talk about the Flint water thing, it wasn't so much about it was about poisoning people. That's, hey, but also if you go beyond that, the Kara Gandhi thing, who's going to pay for it?
Right. Right.
Okay, and who's going to lose? Okay, the reason they were putting in the Kara Gandhi water plant, they needed to extract gas, natural gas, to run the power plants that are going to be built to sustain businesses, not to sustain people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because if you look at that arena downtown, whatever it is, it takes the amount of power, not that it takes to run that place, even after they built it.
Right.
And the money.
Yes.
Okay. Then it's got to come from someplace, and it's not going to come from this population that's here. You got to attract other people. Those are dots that are connected with this thing. And who's in control? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. Then when you start saying, wait a minute, if I take my monies back, even a small amount of money, and accumulated money, eventually that whatever system it is going to fail. I don't care what it is, it's going to fail. If you don't repair your house, it will implode upon itself eventually.
Yes. Yes.
And it takes resources and money to even do that point of it. And where are you getting it from? Yes, you've invested this money. Okay, what now? Now, in the point of the president, when they say lose his power, people say, you know what? Unless you're coming over here with a gun to make me do this, I'm going to do exactly what I want to do. And if I want to destroy my people and beat up over there and whatnot, chooses whatever. And guess what? I'm not sending you any oil. Okay, now even if you send the plane over here, over there to get the oil, and they gotta maintain themselves and now you gotta convince me, the public, to support you, and I don't support you.
Yes. Yes.
I do not support you, and I'm telling my children, don't you go over there and fight for this person. Mm-hmm. You stay right here. If you're going to make a fight, stay here and make this fight.
Right.
And in essence, when you I looked at another situation where they talked about, it was off the record, and they talked about the people that's in control in Detroit. They said Wendell Anthony, the UAW, and Mayor Duggan. So when you refer to this congressional race, yes, they want to wait until they find someone that's going to be in connection with them to lend a narrative that they support.
Yes.
Not the support of the people. They have no intentions of coming through there and supporting the people.
Yes.
Their agenda is something else. They have no agenda of going there and helping you repair your house.
Right.
That doesn't give them money.
Yes. Yes.
Not your money.
Yes.
It doesn't help you live good.
Yes.
It doesn't help you get an education.
Yes.
None of these policies that they're putting forth, that great downtown down there.
Yes.
Hey, now I profited by it. I'm not that criticism because I've helped build quite a few of those buildings down there in my career as a construction worker.
Yes.
But that's gone.
Yes.
I mean, and they don't want me to go back down there again because they don't want to pay me what I want, so I have to retire.
Right.
I'm satisfied with that. I did like the squirrel, put my squirrels away, and I can manage.
Yes.
My only problem is time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Time.
Yeah.
See, the reality comes in to if you stay here long enough, you realize that, time is evasive. I'm not going to put a mark on where I'm going to, but
Right.
it does connect some dots.
Yeah.
I hope I've illuminated people to understand that actually, and control is you have to be completely say no. It's not that way.
Yeah.
You cannot give up,
Yes.
and as simple as that.
Yes. Yes. It is absolutely as simple as that. And it can be to your advantage if you just understand what you're dealing with. the truth of what you're dealing with. We don't have to trick ourselves. That's all I'm trying to get us to understand. We don't have to like it, but we don't have to trick ourselves to say that it's something that it's not. Because then we're back on that wheel. We're back on the wheel that they want us to be on, fighting in and focusing on a direction that isn't beneficial for us. You got to understand what it is. Because you understand what it is, then create a whole different narrative. And you were right. I hadn't heard from you in a while. So I'm so happy that you definitely called in. I appreciate that. And so this is what we're going to do. Caller, I see you. This is what I got to. Okay. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm about to go to break. Let me get you on. Caller?
Yes, this is Nathaniel Coakley.
Yes.
Yes, okay. I just inadvertently called day before yesterday,
Okay.
and I didn't know that she was on TV.
Yes. You are on live on Coffee.
And I'm glad to have gotten in contact with you because you really do have something to say, and you be on point on what you have to say.
Thank you so much.
And the reason why I'm calling is that I'm like a laid-off substitute teacher.
Okay.
And I have gone down to human resources because I was laid off because, in 2005, I was laid off, and there was a assistant principal named Snap. She could have been a part of the embezzlement, in which I was docked $3,000. At first, as a substitute teacher, we was making $22 an hour. Then our pay went down to $17 an hour.
Okay.
And I talked to the secretary, who went to Miss Washington, and this past week she was supposed to have given me an answer in regards to was she a part of the $3,000 that I lost. But she hasn't called me this week. Last week,
So wait, this is what I want you to do. Hold on 1 second. This is what I'm going to go to break on the show. You just hold on, okay? And we'll talk during the break. So everyone, you don't want to go anywhere. This is the kind of conversation where everyone can call in and get your needs met. You know what I mean? That's so important to us. So don't turn that dial. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back and continue the conversation. So happy that you are becoming educated and enlightened and empowered. Remember, when we stay open and honest, anything can happen. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.